Here's something I can't unsee. There's a Catholic medal, the Miraculous Medal. On it, a woman stands on a globe, but it's only half a globe. I think I know why. In 1830, a young nun named Catherine Labouré saw a lady in a chapel in Paris, beautiful, standing on a globe, crushing a serpent. Rays of light were coming from her hands. When I hear anything about rays of light coming out of people's hands, I take notice. The lady never said, "I'm Mary." She just said, "I have a medal made." The church called her Mary, but Catherine only ever called her the lady. That detail matters. She never claimed certainty. She said she saw a beautiful woman. The church filled in the name. And that pattern happens every time. Lourdes, Fatima, Medjugorje, the visionaries never hear "I'm Mary." They hear "I'm the Immaculate Conception" or just "the lady." So I started asking, who is the lady? There's an older story, the story of Estrella. In Greek myth, she was the last immortal to live with humans during the Golden Age. Justice, modesty, good faith. Then the Iron Age came. With it came corruption and greed. She left because she left to become the constellation Virgo. But here's the version that I happened to uncover. The historian Diodorus said she wasn't a goddess at all. She was a human woman, so just, so wise, that after she died, they put her in the stars. She is the goddess of justice and innocence. She is the symbol of the Golden Age. The ancient astronomers saw Virgo as a woman reclining. So I just have to realize I'm reclining. Spica is the ear of wheat in Estrella's hand. The star itself means ear of grain, abundance. Justice doesn't leave empty-handed. That's apotheosis. Apotheosis is a human who became an archetype because, in her case, she earned it. Many gods have similar origins. For thousands of years before Christianity, the divine feminine was worshipped openly. Kubaba, Magna Mater, Isis, Inanna, Cybele, 10,000 names all pointing to the same truth. She is half of everything. The similarities aren't accidental. Estrella stood on a world gone wrong, crushing the serpent of corruption beneath her feet. The lady on the medal does the same. One fled to the stars, the other was leashed inside the church. Same woman, different ending. Then Christianity became the imperial religion. Open goddess worship was outlawed. But here's the problem. People don't stop praying to Mother just because you tell them to. So the church got clever. They kept Mary, but a quiet Mary. A Mary who never teaches, a mother who never rules, a goddess who only intercedes, which means she asks permission from the Father and the Son. She's not a telephone line. She's the ruler, the queen. I have a prayer to invoke Hecate. She is the Greek iteration of Isis. I don't know perfect ancient Greek. I did my best. And she answered, because she's not a telephone line. She's the queen at the crossroads who comprehends intention. She has always been. In fact, Rome herself knew this. They brought the black stone of Magna Mater, the Great Mother, and another iteration of the same goddess to the city in 204 BC. It's a whole story. It's really interesting. Because the prophecies said only she could save them from Hannibal. And she did. Rome rose with her. One Greek philosopher later noted with bitter irony that Rome abandoned the goddess, and then the empire fell. They removed her, and the pillars came down. They knew it. They just forgot. They put a leash on a goddess who's as big as the male counterpart. They co-opted her expulsion. And it's worse than suppression because the love people poured into her was real. The container was a cage. People kept worshiping her in private for centuries. If you know the Catholic Church, you know they integrate what they can't suppress to make their version of the narrative more palatable. Jesus is another example of that pattern. A real person, extraordinary, then worshipped as divine. I'm not saying that's all he was. I understand entire religions stand on Jesus being born God in human form. I'm saying the pattern exists. We deify what moves us. But then the church took that pattern and made a choice. They placed women in a supportive role and men as the main story while proclaiming they weren't doing so. They centered men as the only story. No one comes to the Father except through me. And then Protestants removed Mariology altogether. That's not theology, that's a choice. And that choice leashed the feminine for 2,000 years. Think of a rubber ball held underwater. The patriarchy has been pushing the divine feminine down for millennia, but you can't hold it forever. The deeper you push, the more energy it stores for the release. She is coming up, not because she's angry, because that's what balance does. I heard 3 separate channelers say humanity would evolve when 7% of us wake up. I don't know if they heard each other speak or they understood something from the resonance field of consciousness, but 7%. And I thought, That's fine. That's a threshold to better humanity. But why stop awakening at the minimum? Keep evolving as the world changes. Make it 50. I want half of humanity to wake up. Not because it's harder, because it's better. Let's have a great awakening, not a tiny one. I've never backed down from that. When I pray, sometimes I just say 50% and I know the message is clear. The lady stands on half a globe, half the world, half the population. She's not waiting for everyone, she's waiting for half. Half of us waking up would tip the planet into a new timeline, not because of magic, because conscious people don't worship liars. They don't confuse fear with love. They don't settle for abuse and neglect from a system. Chris Bledsoe said the lady calls herself Hathor, also the goddess of 10,000 names. That's Isis. Isis absorbed all the others. I see her simply as the divine feminine. Half of the story, half of who we are. She doesn't care what name you use. She cares if you remember. The church says God is neither male nor female. And they're right, but not the way they mean it. If God is neither, then both Jesus and Estrella are partial expressions, yin and yang, night and day, fear and love. I know this because the idea of the ancient gods has been misrepresented to us as living beings made mortal, having died on their thrones. Neither is the whole story. So when they made Jesus the only story, that wasn't truth. That was a leash. Another leash. What you were raised to believe is what was palatable to Rome. Our job isn't to delete the masculine, it's to bring back balance. The patriarchy will feel like they're being deleted, but that's the vertigo of losing half the power they never should have had in the first place. The lady is persistent because she can't die. She's the foundation we all stand on. And for that reason, she's half of who we are. Waking up to her isn't conversion, it's return. And every time someone asks, what do you want? And you say, world peace. That's not a slogan, that's an invocation. That's her. She is a love. I don't know. I don't know if a catalyst is coming. I don't know if it's a movement. All I know is I asked for 50%. I meant it. And I think she's been asking for the same all along. She's just been waiting for enough of us to say yes. And that's what I'm hoping you'll do, is say yes.